Lucas, what's up, man? It's good to finally have you on the podcast. I know we've communicated a little bit on Instagram, but to be able to do this is a real treat for me. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, what's been new in your world? Obviously, we see you playing around with guns all the time. I don't even know if that does it justice what you do, but I think that's probably how
It's
people interpret it.
yeah. Well, we just finished our big Black Friday sale, which as a business, we end up planning. I think most businesses, at least they should be, do a lot of their sort of long-term or at least annual planning around Black Friday, because generally speaking, you do a month or 2 months of sales in 3 days. And so we just finished that. It's our biggest like event of the year, really. And in between the businessy stuff, because I have this weird situation where I have to juggle being the CEO and a businessman, and then also go to the range and play with guns.
Right.
I do get to play with guns here and there a couple days a week, and it's still a big part of my job. But a lot of it's actually is more business stuff, more meetings and leadership stuff, and then not so much the guns and the shooting. But I still do probably a lot more than that than most people. So, which it's just
I
how it
think
is.
what you've done is really cool because there's a lot of guys out there who, well, I've seen research actually that have suggested that anywhere between 70 to 80% of respondents in some of these documents and studies I've seen are
Mhm.
dissatisfied with their work. And what I'll hear from a lot of guys is, Ryan, how are you doing order a man? Or how do I start a business? Or how do I pick up something on the side? And then I see what you've created.
Mhm.
And this, I think, is a pretty good testament to the ability to take something that you're interested in, take something that's
Yep.
enjoyable to
Yep.
you, and then turn it into, I assume, is a full-time business for you at this point.
We have 80 employees. So yes.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So did it start as a business, or is what you do something that you started periodically, started a YouTube channel or an Instagram page while you were doing something else?
So it's an interesting, I guess, story you could say, because I was a young guy. I'm homeschooled, grew up in a Christian family. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, what I was going to do as far as a career goes. And when I hit 19, I started to get a little concerned because I didn't have any major career aspirations or anything. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. There were some little inklings. I had an interest in protecting people, helping people somehow. I was a volunteer firefighter for some of that. And then I started playing with this Kydex material, which is used for making holsters, and started getting invested in that. But I didn't have the big picture of, the Second Amendment, the big picture of, what a company could do in, influencing how people see firearms. Like I hadn't gotten to that point yet. I hadn't figured that out. That took a few years. So the first couple years I started on my own with $1,000. It's all debt free, making stuff in a building without heating and air conditioning. Just, the American dream, just making things.
Yes.
And it started to blow up. I had my first employee in, I think it was 4 months, a part-time. And then I brought on two business partners about a year after that, or a year into the business. But it wasn't until the sort of the mission behind the company evolved really over a few years from starting the company. So I didn't have this grand plan. I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think people, have their whole agenda figured out, especially by like
Yes.
age 21. Unfortunately, I wish that were the case. It's not. But I had to develop that as I went, and also from life experience and seeing like, wow, people don't know about guns this way. People don't understand this is what the Second Amendment's, for. I didn't know that. I mean, when I got into the gun industry, I thought everyone will be Christian, everyone will be conservative, everyone's, on the right, we're all one big happy family. Yeah, not at all. It's actually pretty bad in the gun industry as
Right.
far as like, the
Right.
industry goes. And so I had to learn enough of those things to develop a more thorough sort of a grand agenda strategy, as it were. So that took years. Some of it is still developing, but I think we have it pretty well nailed down what our focus is going to be, what my focus is going to be. And it takes time. So for young guys who are listening to this, don't think you can have it all figured out like as soon as you hit age 20 or something. I didn't. It takes time. You have to have some personal experience, some life experience to kind of figure things out, but you do need to be thinking about it. I was thinking about it at
Sure.
age 19 and 20 going, man, am I just going to am I just going to be a garbage man, or am I, is there other stuff that I can do? And I think that's what young folks, and I talk to a lot of young people about this, but young people do need to be thinking about, what is something that I can do that's greater than myself, that is more important than myself, because that is ultimately, at least I can say it from personal experience, that gives me a lot more satisfaction with my job than money. Like, I could care less about the money. It's knowing the work that I am doing is making a positive impact and difference on people's lives. And so you obviously want a job where that can happen, because that'll make you a happier person. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to pursue.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're talking about these dichotomies. And I think a lot of guys tend to look at it that way. They think either I can make a boatload of money or I can pursue something significant and meaningful. And in 2021, you can do both. And there's quite literally no excuse not to be able to do both. When I think about what I do, if I strip everything else away, I talk to people every day. That's it. And I get paid very handsomely to do it. You shoot firearms, you make firearm products, and you get paid handsomely to do it. There's no reason not to do something that you deeply enjoy, you're really passionate about, and also make a lot of money. And they're not conflicting ideas.
Right. I think the other interesting one is I've run into people who have like this sort of a guilt for making money. I mean, you have all these people saying capitalism's wrong, right? And the reality is, there's nothing wrong with money. Now, if you let money control you, that can create all sorts of issues. As the saying goes, money is the root of all kinds of evil, not all evil, but all kinds of evil. And but the reality is, money allows you to create jobs and donate to charities and create programs. Like, money allows you to do a lot of stuff. Now, if you're just spending it on like boats and yachts for yourself, like, okay, that may not be as useful for people. It makes you happy, but money is something that should not be seen as a bad thing, even though I think a lot of people, once they get past kind of the six figures, or like the $250,000 or something, after that, it's like, money, any more money than this, and it's wrong, or I feel guilty, or I'm going to be guilt tripped by people around me. And the reality is, no, if you can create jobs for people, especially last year, I think everyone saw last year, people who can maintain jobs and create jobs during something like, COVID or something, that is a huge service to the country and to people in general. Like, last year for me, that was a big kind of a kick in the pants, was like, oh, creating jobs is actually way more significant than I originally thought. I originally thought, it's a nice thing we do for people, but it's potentially their livelihood, like part of their life. And money happens to help with some of that. If you can make more money, you can, afford to hire more people and sustain them and their families. It's pretty simple. And so I do think it's interesting that you have all the, I guess, I don't want to see people on the left, but the people out there who think that capitalism's, wrong and stuff. And I don't want that to make young guys who are interested in business feeling guilty if that business starts to make money. If it starts to make money, that's great. You can use that money for a lot of good stuff. So I do think it's interesting that there's this sort of guilt associated with being successful, is really what it comes down to.
I mean, it is. It's a real shame that so many people have been led to believe that, like you said, money makes you bad or greedy or whatever. But, you even said something too. You talked about the boats and the yachts. Like, I've caught myself at times saying, nobody needs that big a house, or nobody needs that boat, or nobody needs this or that. Mm-hmm. Well, who am I to judge? And not to mention, who built the yacht? Who built the boat? Yeah. What fees are you paying to have the boat? Who's going to come clean the boat? What taxes did you pay on the boat? Like all of this stuff in a free market society. And I don't totally believe we live in a free market society right now, but if we move closer to that ideal, that's a good thing. And I don't think it should come at the expense of other people, but you've got 80 employees working for you. Like, that's a voluntary agreement between you and other consenting adults. If they don't like it, go find another job. If you don't like it, pay them less, pay them more. But you two as adults are agreeing upon this together.
Yep. So so it's pretty interesting. I'm learning a lot right now as the company's gotten bigger, because we were under 50 employee marks. That's when you have to have healthcare, and that's when your business becomes a big business, your small business. Well, ish, not really, but I am learning right now. Probably the biggest thing that I'm learning right now is people people management, people skills.
Mm,
Because historically with the company, and this is such a big one. Honestly, for people wanting to start businesses, you're going to get to focus on the product and the service for like the first maybe 2 or 3 years. Like you could get your hands all dirty and like the process of what the thing is that you're doing. But after that, as soon as you start hiring people, you are going to be you're going to be deep in people issues and people stuff. And it's not always like bad stuff. It's just, politics between individuals, departments, stuff like that. And so that's a big one I'm learning. And I'm also learning that sometimes the money thing, I mean, there's a lot of emotional factors for people. Money's one of them. Their status is another, their position, their respect. There's like a few like main items for some people, it's, more than it's more, I guess, significant than others. But I'm still learning all this stuff and now having, a lot of employees where now I can't just be in the process of like creating the product or like going and shooting it, on the range. Now it's like, oh, I got this issue. I got to go in and talk to so-and-so about it and then go to so-and-so. We've got to, do this or that. And it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. But it is a completely different thing that I didn't expect, or wasn't thinking about as the company is getting bigger. And I know, well, as soon as we hit 100 employees, it should be next year. That's going to go up more, 150 employees. Like, okay, we get the right, personnel in there to hopefully, be able to handle some stuff. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be involved in some of that. So that's been a real fun one right now. This year in particular has been.
Do you have any mentors or, coaches or just people in your corner? I know you've got some business partners that sound like that have helped you work through this, because I think you could probably figure out a lot of that stuff on your own, but it'll take time and money. Yeah. And personally, I'm not interested in spending more time and money than necessary. So have you gone the coaching or mentorship route?
I have a couple guys that I talk to who run other businesses in completely different industries, which is actually something that can be really helpful and it's not all just the same thing. I've been trying to find I'm actually looking for a coach, professional coach that I have on a schedule and I talk to and all that. But I'm also just looking for more people who run, businesses in general. And I'm part of an organization that I'm trying to meet some people within, and most of that, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's sad, but maybe for me it is, because I'm not as interested in this than they are, but so many of them have made their success doing real estate, which is great. We do some real estate investing. I think I originally didn't think it was a great way of using money. And, my wife has explained to me how it works and she runs some of that and it's great. But that's their thing. So it's all real estate stuff, and they're not running large groups of people or organizations. It's more about managing money, which is great. That's a skill in and of itself, managing money. And I've had a hard time finding other people that run companies that make stuff, that just who run like an organization that creates a product, retails a product, a service. The real estate, I kind of see the real estate game as like its own thing. That's very different, kind of run differently. And so I'm trying to find, people in manufacturing companies, retail companies in general to learn from, because that's kind of what we do. And then the other one is I don't want to say public figures. I don't like that word very much. But other people that are in a kind of a similar situation.
Influencers.
Yeah. Oh my God. Jeez, that's probably the worst of all, or brand ambassadors.
Definitely.
But also those kinds of people, because that's a whole different, and you've talked to all kinds of cool people. You probably have all kinds of advice, but that's a whole nother like business. Basically, if you are a public figure, you've got like the whole silo thing, right? You have like your YouTube stuff is like its own silo. You've got your retail stuff, that's its own silo. You've got your production, your manufacturing, that's its own. And the fame and the notoriety and the YouTube stuff, because we have a platform of around 2 million people, so that's a lot of people that are putting that's you under a magnifying
on all your
glass.
Social media portfolios or whatever.
So
So
we reach, 250,000 people a day, roughly, who are seeing our stuff actively every day. So that means, 10% of those people have a magnifying glass out and they're trying to figure out, They're trying to find anything they can to discredit you and your brand and your company. And they create little
Such a
militias,
ridiculous
and little
waste of
mobs.
time.
I know you'd think if they took all that time and just focused on themselves, they'd be happier, but no, they don't. So
I think, I don't know about happier, you know, like I constantly think about this, even that word happiness. Like I think a lot of people believe that's what we're after. I don't think that's what we're after. I think we're after real problems that are meaningful and significant to us, which isn't happiness. To me, it's more fulfillment. And so these people, you know, maybe they're happy, but they're also miserable inside because they're just not content with their own life because they're not pursuing things that are meaningful and purpose driven to them.
Well, and they may feel, I mean, they obviously feel purpose of going after their favorite celebrity. Cause I mean, it's got to give them something.
Yeah, maybe.
They're getting something out of it, but it's just like, are you gonna think back on your deathbed and be like, man, I'm so glad I spent 2 months going after this guy. I'm so glad I spent, 2 years on Reddit talking to a bunch of anonymous people who don't even have profile pictures. And it's just like, so the internet's, it's definitely, that's been another big one just over the past few years, learning, probably the most fascinating thing to me is learning human behavior through this whole thing with the internet, with people in person, people who talk nice to your face, they, go behind your back, kind of thing. People try to take advantage of you, companies. And that's actually been probably the most fascinating stuff for me, has been that sort of thing. And then also how other influencers and public figures, how they, utilize their brand, how they destroy their brand, how they build up their brand. I was fortunate to have a guy give me a very clear example of what not to do when I started to get a little famous. And I don't like the word famous either, but I started to get some notoriety, right?
Some notoriety. So people started paying attention.
Yeah.
Sure.
Paying attention. That's probably the best way to say it. I started getting people who are paying attention. And then he took a big downward, Icarus got too close to the sun, kind of a thing, big downward spiral. And I watched the whole thing and was like, I'm not going to do those 4 things because it will lead to that. And thanks. I appreciate that. So
with your 80 employees right now, you started with Kydex holsters, it sounded like, and then obviously it's probably continued and become more elaborate, more offerings. Is all of your stuff done stateside, and how much of it do you control? Meaning it's within your purview. It's not, overseas, like it's some other state where you don't have any control over quality, all that kind of stuff.
So all the holsters are made, we make them here in America. There is one component that comes from overseas. It's the screws. Unfortunately, the primary material though is all made in America, which is awesome. But a large part of the company now, it's like 80% of our total sale, or 70% or something like that, is our retail. So another thing that we do, because it's a whole nother like business silo, is we curate through my time on the range and me like doing a bunch of shooting and stuff. We curate products that we like. So optics, weapon lights, lasers, because there's a lot out there. I mean, you go to one of these big like Amazon style tactical websites. I mean, you look up, Red Dot, and there's 100, and then the average consumer is like, I don't know what to buy. There's $100, there's $500, there's whatever. So we try. That's
actually the beauty. Just to interject real quick, that's the beauty, I think, of what you do, is people get to know you, and this is also the power of social media. They get to know you to a degree. They don't know you obviously personally, and they begin to trust you because you're putting so much content out there. And then they go to buy a Red Dot, or they go to buy some sort of optic, and they're like, well, Lucas, like I've been following him for 2 years. I trust what the guy's talking about. Like, that's such a powerful lesson in how, even though social media gets shit on a lot, and there's some reasons for it, how powerful it can actually be if you harness it correctly. And I think you're doing it right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I do think one thing that I have done probably pretty differently compared to other CEOs is I like to maintain a direct connection to our customer base. Sometimes to the point of I'm giving them more attention than my own employees, which that's a whole nother conversation. But, with live streams and stuff like that, like I did a 5-hour live stream yesterday, answering questions for Black Friday to, I don't know how many, few thousand people it was or whatever. And that's just 5 hours in front of a camera, taking whatever question. We talked about everything. We talked about political stuff, and nobody wanted to talk about Black Friday. They want to talk about other more important stuff, which is fine with me. But,
Hey, the Black
That
Friday is
sort of
just ancillary. I think people are
exactly.
real concerned with real conversations with people they like.
Yeah, it's true. So we talked about a lot of that, but I think that is something a lot of businessmen or CEOs, and you do have to be kind of geez, what's the right word? Because I'm not an extrovert. I don't like hanging out with lots of people normally. It's just funny because I'm fine on camera. But
Yeah,
you do
you and your guns and your camera and you're happy, right?
exactly.
And
It's
maybe your
fine.
wife.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't need 100 people over at the house. But it does take I don't want to say a special kind of person, but a person who's willing to have that kind of attention and put themselves out there and kind of open, pull back the veil, open up their private life to some extent, which is why I think a lot of CEOs and businessmen don't do it, because it is another level of stress and work of like, man, every second I'm on the air, there's a chance I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret later. That's going to result in lost sales. So I'm going to have to lay people off. And, but if you are able to get past all of that, I think the pros greatly outweigh the cons as far as, being that transparent, approachable person, or not approachable. The word that the people have been using for me is, what's the word? It's accessible. That's it.
Okay.
If you're
Right.
someone
Sure.
who's accessible, where people can find you, that gives them a lot of trust in your brand. I think Elon Musk is another guy who's a pretty good example of that. He goes on interviews all the time. He's got people following around with cameras, and people feel like they know the guy, even though they don't get to ask him questions on Q&As and polls and stuff like that. And they kind of talk to him on Twitter. But that, I think, has contributed a lot to his success, because he seems like a regular human being. But we all know he's an alien trying to go back to Mars. But he seems like a normal human being because he has that accessibility. And I think that's something that a lot of business owners need to think about doing. It comes, there are risks associated with it, but the rewards for it it basically allows you to know what your customers are thinking. So as you're trying to navigate where you're supposed to go with your business, you will have that feedback that, from one person, the horse's mouth. You're not getting it from your customer service team. You're not getting it from someone else, your analytics guys, marketing company. You're getting it straight from the people that follow you. You get their criticisms, which are sometimes valid. Most of the time they're not. And you just have a lot more intel to work off of if you're willing to put yourself out there at the risks, that can happen. But with social media, I mean, we've got live streaming services, we've got YouTube, there's no reason, you can't get in front of a camera and just say, hey, here's what our company's about. Here's what we're trying to do this year. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask me. Like there's this many CEOs doing that. But that brings in a lot of brand loyalty with people if they see that the leader who's leading from the front is willing to do that sort of thing. So I'd like to see more of that.
I would too. And the beauty of that is it's all free.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't cost you anything to get on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything to get on social media. You could do that. And like you said, be accessible. But, you also said there's a level of risk every time you open your mouth. And I would agree. I think there is.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, when you build a brand, we'll just call it a brand for now, on certain principles. You have a brand that has principles. Obviously, Second Amendment rights are going to be a huge principle of yours. One of our founding principles is sovereignty and maintaining control over your own life. Mm-hmm. When you build it upon principles, I think the risk is reduced, because it's not like I'm ever going to say something that is a complete shock to somebody that listens for any amount of time. Like nobody who's been with us for 5 years is going to say, I can't believe you talked about gun rights. How dare you? It's like, really?
Yeah.
How long have you been following us? And so all it does is, by making a stand where everybody else is afraid to make a stand on cultural issues, societal issues, politics, all it does is it emboldens you, but it also draws the right people to you. And there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that's why we see, I think we've only ever put out a public statement about something people misconstrued. I think we've done it once within 8 years. But
do you remember what it was?
I don't. I think it was also super minimal at the time. It was like, whatever. But I think the reason we see companies making flubs, or their marketing directors making flubs, is they haven't communicated, or they don't know what their stances actually are, or how hard they want to go on them. Like, we know there are certain stances that this is how hard we go on this. And we've communicated that, I think, at least well enough to the people who have the social media logins, that these are the kinds of things we do. These are the kinds of things we don't do. So that has also helped prevent us from, having to come out and be like, oh, hey, he said a thing. That's one of our employees. He didn't know that my vision. I didn't give him my commander's intent. Right. He's been fired. And yeah, that's the last thing I want to do. Even if it's not our fault, because I don't make the post saying some like crazy thing. But I do think that's why a lot of these companies have these PR troubles, is they haven't actually sat down and gone, are we trying to be mainstream and accessible to everyone, who, regardless of, politics and whatever, or are we going to take these sorts of stands, these over here? Are we going to talk about this? Are we not going to talk about this? And they actually haven't done that. And that's why they run into someone saying something, then they have to come out and apologize, or they have to come out and say, oh, well, actually we meant this. And I think they need to have a more clear, it's not even necessarily the core values, but behind the company, it's just their, what they're willing to say publicly, or that they want to say publicly, because that's a whole nother issue, is your own agenda and, explaining what you believe to people. But I think that's why companies have PR issues.
Well, I mean, yes, sure. But also I think people just lack balls. I really do.
You're not wrong.
It's like, look, I understand a huge multi-billion dollar corporation who's trying to save face and appeal to as many people as possible. I get it.
It doesn't
I
work.
understand.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for me. I have like 5 employees. You have 80. The guys that are listening, maybe anywhere from sole entrepreneur to 100 or 200 employees. Like, grow some balls.
It's true.
Make a stand and know what you stand for.
Yeah. Well, and actually a fun example is 2 of the largest, or maybe it's the same company. This is me not knowing exactly, but some of the largest companies out there are social media superiors, or social media overlords.
Right. Our tech overlords.
They take stands all the time that are not in the middle. At least I don't think they're in the middle, because, they negatively affect me, going to get after guns and stuff. They're not afraid to make a stand and upset quite a few people. So if a company of that size, multi-billion dollar like type company can do that, there's no reason you, as a $1 million company or $50 million company, can't do that. You can absolutely do that. In fact, what I've found when we've made statements on, we believe this is our conviction, we're not budging on this, about 99% of the time our sales go up. From people.
Sure, of course.
I even get people who are like, I don't agree with that at all, but I respect that you said it. I'm going to go give you money. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I'll take it, and I'll give you a thing in return. I'm not going to take donations, but I'll take your money for a service. And so I think a lot of people have this weird idea that they will lose money if they, if you went and said something maybe super crazy, or said like Hitler's your hero or something, like, okay, I can understand why maybe people aren't going to want to give you money after that. But most people, if they just put out their convictions, even as simple as they are, like, hey, you should have take personal responsibility over your life. Yeah, you'll get sales for saying that, which is pretty crazy, because that's, not even that crazy of a thing to say. But yeah, I agree.
In this day and age, it actually
in this
is.
Day and age,
how dare you?
Yeah. How dare you say that we shouldn't be entitled?
Can you, with your business, and firearms and all of that, can you even advertise on social media? You personally, you can't, right?
We can't do all the paid, like, official, sponsored ad stuff. No, so
but you make your post and you say, hey, go check out this link or whatever. But you can't boost it or advertise on it.
Correct. And if I make the post, and this is actually another fun one, if I make the post too obvious it's a sales post, Instagram will remove it.
Really?
And then I have to like submit a thing saying, no, I'm not selling guns. And then, 80% of the time it comes back because they review it. Some dude in Silicon Valley looks at it and goes, oh, I guess that's not a gun. And it's okay. But yeah, they've cracked down on advertising, like direct advertising for your brand. But the fun thing with us is it really didn't affect us that much because we don't treat our social media like a sales platform. And I honestly think it's the way to do it. If you spam people with, hey, this new product came out, hey, go check this out, it turns people off to your brand. It becomes, they just get inundated with these ads for product. And so kind of our strategy, and I'm a horrible salesman. I rarely even talk about our own product. I'm not even wearing our own hat right now, but it all helps though. But
I'll send you an Order of Man hat so you can wear that one instead.
Hey,
if you're not going to wear yours, wear mine.
Exactly. I'll definitely wear that one. But I have a few hats, and I'm very particular about whose hat I wear.
Fair enough.
That's a big deal. And cover all logos up on clothing usually, and stuff like that. But the sales sort of strategy that we've taken is we want to give people value with our social media or YouTube. YouTube videos don't even cover our product usually. Whatever it is that we're putting out there has to give value to people in some other way. In the process, we may use our products to communicate the principles like, hey, I'm going to show you guys how to shoot pistol. I'm using our holster. Do I talk about it in the video? Probably not, because I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking
but people are going to ask about it. They see it and they're like, hey, what holster are you wearing? What firearm? Exactly. What site are you running? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what we found is that strategy where you give people value 80% of the time that is separate from your own brand. And then 20% ish, you say, oh yeah, we have this new product that came out. Oh yeah, we do. This is the product that I use that I've been using for months. That sales strategy works. It works very well for building brand loyalty. The whole just pound people with sales, that probably actually works pretty well for getting sales. But the question is, what are you doing long-term for your brand by doing that? I don't want to get, I love you just as an example. I don't necessarily want to get Hobby Lobbied. I like Hobby Lobby, but they have sales going all the time. You walk into the store and we got all these sales going on. I mean, they've got stuff going all the time. And at this point I disregard them. I'm like, I don't care. I know you have them going all year. I don't need it. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to pay attention to it because you have it here.
It's funny.
Every time I walk in.
The other day I went out shopping with my wife, did some Christmas shopping. I went into a store and we bought some clothes and they said, the bill's $400 or whatever it was. And they said, you saved $113 today. And I'm like, well, how did I do that? And she's like, we just have a sale. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know if I would consider that saving anything,
exactly.
It's just, but I see what you're saying is if everybody's blasting all the time, it just becomes annoying. And I think there's a cost associated with that too. But what you're doing is more in integrity anyways, because it's very easy for me to say, use X, Y, and Z companies versus actually wearing a product or using a product, whether it's my jujitsu gi or your firearms, and people see it and they're like, oh, okay, well, Ryan actually uses that. So I trust that more than the cleverly worded sales pitch that he promoted, last Friday for Black Friday.
Yeah, no, it's true. And the difficult thing with this sales strategy is what it requires is that you have enough value to give people 80% of the time outside of your product. And that's a lot of work. So next year, one thing I'm probably doing for next year is because this year I wasn't able to do it. I normally train on my own without cameras, without anyone, a day a week. I go out and for a day I test product, whatever it is I'm doing, or some other skill set. And I haven't been able to do that this year because the CEO responsibilities have gone up. And there's a bunch of other stuff as well that if I got married, that definitely affects things a little bit.
You got married this year?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool, man. Congrats.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's been great. She's very supportive. And we're definitely a power couple. I would say.
I won't tell her it took you so long to answer what year you got married, even though it was within the last 11 months. We won't bring that up.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Well, so what happened with that is, so again, being a public figure or whatever, we got married pretty soon after we got engaged because we were like, this is dumb. We're not gonna be engaged for a long time. We just, due to the internet and stuff, we didn't tell people right away because I didn't want all these people prying into our lives because they already do that enough as it is, trying to find where we live and trying to get my phone number, just stupid stuff. And so we just, private life is private. And then we announced it recently, oh yeah, we got married. Sorry, we didn't invite all 2 million of you to the wedding, but
how dare you?
That's just how it is. But I'm actually hoping to bring her onto a live stream at least once, to answer some questions and for people to kind of get to know her because she's awesome. She's great.
Yeah.
And they're very curious. And she's got some she's helping people with some real investing advice and stuff because that's her thing that she does a lot of study on. But So as far as what I was saying, oh yeah. So the thing that I'm doing for next year, and I think this is something that I think it has a lot of merit, is because I don't have time to, work on that 80% value to contribute, like the extra 80% value we're trying to give people outside of the product. What I'm probably going to have to do next year is tell my team, hey, every Friday, I am not going to be available for work. Like that day is going to be dedicated to personal development of shooting, traveling to a course or a training thing, or flying some expert out here to work with me for a day, or going to some, business coaching thing or whatever. And every Friday, it's just going to be personal development to aid in that. Because the 80% we're trying to give people, it's not our product, is a product in and of itself. Like it really is.
Absolutely.
It's a thing that we're offering. And that requires, a pretty in-depth, personal development plan, building that. Because the last thing I want is I have, this much knowledge and that's all I have. And I just regurgitate that every year. I want to build on it, have new stuff, learn new things, build new perspective. And that takes time. So that's the thing the idea I've been playing with is, hey, 50 days of the year, I have specifically set aside for doing whatever it is that I need to do to develop that knowledge and that skill, because I just can't do it anymore with all the other responsibilities going on right now. And just kind of creating that expectation for people, and then building a plan around, okay, well, this Friday I'm going to do long range, and next Friday I'm going to work on this, standard that we have to do. And this Friday I'm going to work on, this new product. And then this one, I'm going to travel to here to go, hang out with so-and-so and talk to them about whatever. And that's part of the job, is going and seeking knowledge to give people.
It's a good idea. And it's, I found that the busier I personally get, the harder it is to do. And the harder it is even at times to justify doing it. For me, for example, I'm in the process of writing a book right now that's going to come out next year. And so part of that is I'm required, just because I want this to be a good book for people, is to do the research behind it. And it's very easy for me, even knowing that I have this plan and this goal, to not research today or not to read today, because I got all these emails and I got these people and I have to make this social media post. And what I've allowed happen in the past is to let all of this noise and this chaos really, and it's important. I'm not saying it isn't, but all of this noise and chaos to distract me and really just kind of mess up the priorities that I have as I think about my goals moving into next year.
Yep. And you've written, correct me if I'm wrong, you've written 2 books so far? Is that
one? This will be my second book. This will be my second book. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Such a pain. I do not like writing, man.
I do
not like writing. No, I hate it. But it's important. And so I put it out because it's important. It's another medium to get the information out.
Are you folks? This is actually, I'm very curious about this, because as you know, people don't read anymore. Well, unless it's on their phone and it's this much stuff, they don't read anymore. I would assume it's mostly men reading your book, although men aren't reading as much. Probably, there's probably studies. I kind of doubt men are reading as much as women are these days, even though I think reading is
women do generally read more than men. And so what we found is, in spite of that, whatever platform you look at, whether it's YouTube or our email list or Instagram or a book, it's usually going to be about 80 to 85% men, 15 to 20% women. That's pretty generally what it is across all platforms for us.
So is book length something that you consider, or are you like, I don't care if it's long, it's long, and if it's short, it's short, and if dudes are going to read it, dudes are going to read it? Or do you give any thought to?
Yes, I do. And here's why, because I have goals of reaching New York Times. So in order to do that, if you look at what books are reaching the bestseller list, they have minimum word lengths. So, you try to, you got to hit those lengths. You got to hit those parameters. And obviously I want to put together a book.
You're saying a minimum.
Yeah, because if you put together a small book, here's kind of a smaller book. If you put something together like that's kind of like an ebook style pamphlet, thing you could read in the bathroom. Like it's valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable.
Sure.
It just probably won't reach the bestseller list.
Yeah, it doesn't have the perceived value of a larger. So you just need to print a book with a 20-point type and have the margins
exactly.
really
Like the old
wide.
high school thing. I was thinking about doing Ron Swanson's thing where he wrote a book or wrote a manual for his, like his version of the Boy Scouts. And
Right.
I think it was a bunch of blank pages, if you remember. And then there was one sentence that said, "Be a man," I think is what it said.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking about just recreating that, but I don't want to plagiarize from Ron Swanson, of course.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't be doing that, but that's a good goal. New York Times, I think that's, what is that, 10,000 copies first week, or 20, or total, or 20,000, or what is it?
I actually don't know what it is right offhand. I decided to go the publishing route to have somebody come in and help me with that side of things. So they're helping me with the marketing and the publicity and the metrics and all that kind of stuff. So right now it's like, just right. That's all I'm thinking about. Just right.
And then you do a book tour for a year, and then it's a whole thing that you do.
Yeah, they're getting it all set up. The gal emailed me yesterday and she's like, "Here's your marketing plan." I'm like, holy cow, like this is legit. So
that's
we'll see.
Awesome.
Look, I want to shift gears a little bit. You were talking about moving into 2022. I'm actually really interested in you being an insider, what you feel like the trends of the firearms community, how politics and just cultural thinking has maybe shifted with our relationship to firearms, and what you see us going towards in 2022 and moving on.
So I think one of the big ones has been when you have a predominantly peacetime society or country, people get to focus on fun stuff. I was talking about this some yesterday. You get to focus on, I was talking about in terms of certain guns, we're not in war right now, so we can dabble with some like fun novelty kind of gun stuff. If war were to kick off tomorrow, we wouldn't be thinking about that, worrying about that, buying that. We'd be buying only stuff that is used for war. Like that's World War II. There's lots of other instances where you could see manufacturing.
When you say we, you're talking about the consumer. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the consumer.
Got it. Okay.
The public. And what we're seeing, and what I've been seeing, because I've been doing this now for 8 years, and I remember 8 years when I got into it. We were still in GWAT and doing stuff, but it was peacetime here in America that people weren't that interested in body armor. I would get crap for wearing body armor as a civilian. As soon as I put an IR laser on my rifle, people were like, "Well, why do you have night vision?" And this was like 6 years ago. Nobody says that anymore. Nobody makes fun of people anymore for wearing body armor, having military equipment, having night vision. I mean, that's the new like status symbol in firearms. Right. Night vision, which rightfully so. Seeing in the dark is pretty cool. But I do think as the country, and I wouldn't say we're in like war or anything right now, we're still in peacetime, but as things warm up, which I think they will every election moving forward. I mean, they have been the past couple elections, but
and we have the election domestically mostly is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm not really the whole scenario of like Red Dawn and like other countries invading. That's a whole discussion that people should think about, but I don't know if it's as reasonable to assume it's going to happen compared to what's already happening domestically and what is going to happen domestically in the next election. Because every election we're seeing that the two sides are getting more and more divided. We were seeing it to the point of violence. Originally, it was just to the point of shouting and, maybe following someone to a restaurant and berating them. But now it's like getting to violence, 8 years, down the road. So this election, I think, is just going to be that with a little bit more sprinkled on. And then the next one will be that and a little more sprinkled on. So unless there's a major cultural change in the country, which I don't see happening in the next decade, I don't, because it takes decades, generations for people to completely change, how they see things and their kids and, whatnot. So we're in this
catastrophic events. Can change quickly, but it would take something catastrophic. Sure.
Correct. Something like a civil war or a foreign invasion or something like that, or even the US dollar bottoming out or something like that. So as the country moves more into a more, a concerning time, what I am seeing in consumers is they are less interested in just buying a gun and putting it in the safe. And they're more interested in buying what's the next thing and sort of leveling up as a gun owner. So it's body armor. We sell a ton, literally tons, like weight of body armor. Last year we sold, I think they said it was like 12 metric tons of armor, something like that last year, which years before wouldn't have sold. People just more interested in it. But as soon as you start having,
you wear body armor, you said?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Where do you wear it?
Chest. It's
no, I don't mean wear on your body. I mean wear like out in public, like when you're in large crowd. Like where do you wear?
If I'm in Chicago, yeah, at the range, particularly. But one thing that we did when the peaceful times were happening last year, there were some threats to a bunch of businesses.
Peaceful, I think, is how it's phrased.
They were very peaceful. We got the call that there was going to be some peaceful activity in a town near us called Franklin, bougie part of Nashville. And I had a friend who ran a security company, and he contacted some of our guys, and we said, hey, well, if you've got 5 or 6 businesses you're going to go check on, because they're asking you to, we'll come lend bodies. So we went out there, we had full kit. The cops knew we were there. We also had our night vision. The cops didn't have night vision, so we had a capability that they didn't have. And we went and talked to them. They said, yep, you guys are good to go. Thanks for letting us know you're here. And we just made the rounds in minivans. And I wore armor for that because, we're mounted. We're not walking for miles. So I may as well wear my armor. I don't think anyone's going to be shooting. Thankfully, they didn't. But if you have it, and you're not walking for 10 miles through the entire town, then that's when you wear it. So
what's your take on something like that activity? So you and some individuals in a militia type capacity, I would say, right? Would you disagree with that?
No, I think,
okay.
Unfortunately, the word is so
I know, but that's what it
destroyed,
is, though, right?
It is what it is. Yes.
All right. So let's call it that, because that's what it is, whether or not people have a stigma associated with that.
Sure.
What's your take on that in light of what's happened over the past year with the culmination of the Rittenhouse trial? And do people have the right to go out and bring a gun? And then if they defend themselves, is that really defense, or were they aggregators, or agitators, I should say? How has that changed, if at all, for you and your perception of it?
So I think this is an interesting point with the Rittenhouse trial. So leading up until the shooting, there are lots of videos and photos. And I remember seeing them during the day before the shooting happened, of people berating them at one location. And there were like 6 of them. There was like this bald guy with a bunch of multicam kit. There was a guy who looked like he was out of a movie. There was Kyle, and there were a couple other dudes. There were like 5 people. While they were together as a group protecting that one business, nothing happened. They got yelled at, they got spat on, like they got probably some little pebbles thrown at them and stuff, but nothing happened as a group. It wasn't until he got separated, and then, people started to try to, mess around with him, is when things kicked off. So the real learning point for that one is, if you are wanting to engage in an activity of protecting other people's stuff or your own stuff, let's just say it's your own stuff, don't do it alone. Have a bunch of friends. And if you are in a group and you look somewhat professional, so like what we wore is we wore Ranger Green, which is a very official looking,
you look official.
Color. Sure. We looked very official. We looked professional. We weren't all wearing our night vision, but we had it in our bags and stuff. And so armor, belt, pistol, active retention holster, suppressed rifles. If people saw us, they would think, wow, that's probably the undercover SWAT team, or, whatever. We don't look like a bunch of, ragtag people from the woods that have just come out to the city to, throw down with the city boys, So I think that's a concept that people do need to think about, that we've been talking about for a while. Like, if you are going to put yourself in a position in the public, so you're in the public eye, you really need to think about your appearance. It's why police departments and militaries, like, uniformity is a huge deal, just from a professional standpoint, target discrimination standpoint, like knowing who's who, and a
de-escalation standpoint, because they're less likely to escalate if they see something in some sort of, even if they just interpret it as official capacity.
Yep. And if they ask, like, who are you guys? You don't have to answer. Don't pretend like you're a law enforcement or anything, but you don't have to answer. You'd say, I don't have to answer that. And then they're like, oh shoot, maybe these are spooks and we really shouldn't mess with them. So I think people need to think about the professionalism that is associated with the activity that they're doing. And are they coming off as professional or not? Do they look like a well-regulated militia, a professional unit, or do you look like a bunch of ragtag hillbillies who just showed up to maybe
cause trouble?
yeah, maybe cause trouble, or just, it's fun because it's the fun activity happening over the
Right. It
weekend.
looks
I
cool.
think
And
that's why
yeah.
people, protest too. It's the fun activity for the weekend that everyone shows up to do. Isn't that why
Hmm.
people protest? Not all of them,
I,
but it's,
I mean, I think they believe in many instances that they're doing it for the right
yeah, yeah.
reasons, but it ends up being,
But
yeah,
burning
not,
cars
not,
is
not
so
noble intention.
fun. Burning dumpsters,
Yeah.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
So
See how that,
yeah,
go ahead.
so I do think it's something we're going to see more of. The court case has set a precedent that if you do go to do this sort of activity and you are attacked while you're there, it can be self-defense. Even if you did show up with a firearm, ahead of time to do,
Which is
protect the
completely
business or
legal.
whatever. Yep, completely legal. I travel, the whole state lines thing was the funniest thing. I travel with guns every time I go out of state. And to me, I'm in America. I'm not going to, unless I'm going to California, which is, California or something. I'm going to America. I don't care about state lines as I'm moving around with guns and stuff. And so it's funny that was the hill people wanted to die on, especially since
Well,
it's
I don't
only
even
15
think he
minutes
took
away.
that. I don't even
30
think
minutes.
he took that firearm across state
No.
lines.
Yeah. I
Actually.
think that was,
I hear what you're saying, but I don't
yeah.
even think that was an issue.
Yeah, no, I think it was determined. And then that brings up a whole nother point that I've brought up and this is one people need to think about, particularly for this issue. What is your community? Because there are people let's say riots kick off up north, I think they sort of kind of are. Is that my community? I have a responsibility to go up and protect 10 hours away. Maybe that might be a stretch. Me driving an hour to Franklin, where I take my wife on dates, I know people there, I could potentially work there. That is much more my community that I could argue than another state 8 hours away, something like that. And I think that's something people need to think about. Is your community only your house, only your neighborhood, only your town, or is it your surrounding area, your stomping grounds, as it were, that you are doing everyday activity in? And I think that's, people haven't thought about it. I mean, and I haven't thought a ton about it. Man, how far will I actually go to help people in America?
Sure.
Will I travel to Alaska to help people, fight bears and stuff? Probably not. Would I go down to Alabama because a hurricane comes through? Absolutely. That's only one state away. They're a neighbor. I would do that sort of thing. And I think that community aspect, as far as moving forward with, going into midterms in the election, is something people need to think about. Their professionalism as an organization. Do they have people on the ground that they can communicate with? Don't just, we didn't just want to go to Franklin in kit to just walk around randomly. We had a guy who knew people, who had businesses, he had the connections. So it made sense for us to fall in with him. We didn't just show up. You don't want to do that. You need to have a reason to be there outside of just wanting to do good. I think there should be some more objective reason for that. And having those connections with people, I think is a big deal. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we're going to see a lot more people after this trial going, you know what, we can do this and we should do this potentially as things kind of ratchet up and get a little more wild. So,
you said something else too, and I think it was important. You kind of said it as a throwaway, but it sounds like you communicated with law enforcement as well. So this wasn't a surprise. They didn't consider you an enemy or look at you as a threat. It was very well communicated from what I'm hearing, and they were receptive and open to it as well.
Yeah. In most cases, law enforcement, if this sort of activity, if this sort of peaceful activity is going on, law enforcement in most places, I would say, will welcome a professional organization of people who have a clear objective. Hey, our friends own this business. We are going to be at this business. We are armed. We have radios. We can, if you want to come talk to us whenever, we're available. If you need us for anything, we're available, but we are going to be doing this thing, which is fully legal. Most law enforcement are going to respect that and like that, because the more deterrence you can have, or the more presence you can have in an area, quite often, the better. So there's a couple states where, some cities where you probably, if I showed up with 10 dudes and we were all in kit, that cops would probably not like it. But I think in most places in America, if it's done professionally, again, it all comes down to professionally. If you as the spokesperson go and say, here's what's going on, here's what we're doing, here's our objective, here's, what we are and aren't going to do. I mean, that's going to sound super squared away than just, showing up in camo in an urban situation, which doesn't look very professional. And then, not having communications, radios, it doesn't look good. And it communicates something completely different than what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So. Great point. I like that you're talking about the I don't even know how you'd say it as much as just appearance. What are the optics of it, right? Yep. And how crucial that is, because I actually see this in the hunting community. Are you a hunter?
I like hunting. I like hunting pigs from helicopters. That's a lot of fun.
That's cool. I would definitely
super fun.
So I look at it in the hunting community and I'll see what people will post. I'm like, I know what your intent was. I know that you're probably a good person, that you're excited that you harvested an animal and you're going to bring it home. I get all that, but like, you really should and ought to consider how the general population is going to view that action or that picture or those words before you just go posting stuff like that. It's, you could say it's a shame, but it's really not. It's as old as man himself. The way that we present ourselves is sending a message about who we are and what our intent is. And people are going to judge that, whether you like it or not.
It's true. And this is a perfect example. The last thing I'd want to do is show up downtown Nashville to protect fill in the blank, some sort of store. And all of us are wearing Punisher skulls and we're all wearing all black. And we all have AK-47s, Kalashnikov rifles, which in culture and popular media are the bad guy gun.
Right.
Not the best optics. If we show up wearing jeans, American, like citizen clothing or undercover law enforcement clothing, and we have Ranger green plate carriers with big American flags on the front of them, that communicates a very different image to the population than Punisher stuff, AKs, all black clothing, and that's a big deal. People don't put enough stock into that, and I talk about it a lot because, and especially in the gun community, anything you do as a gun owner is going to affect, how people around you see all gun owners. Like, you are an influencer, a brand ambassador to the entire community with your actions. And
it's going to influence legislation. It's going to influence gun rights, like all of the stuff that you say you want to protect, and you're painting it in a bad light. Is not a productive thing.
Yeah, like a couple people who weren't the most professional are the reason why I'm not supposed to carry a gun in Chipotle. Now, do I still carry a gun in Chipotle? Absolutely, I do. But a couple people went and open carried, as is their right, but in a very not professional manner. And because of that, Chipotle, like, I guarantee if they had walked in and looked like, if they had, like, for example, looked like undercover law enforcement or just looked, nice, nobody would have said a word. They would have just been like, you know what? They're meant to be here. They walked in with purpose. They've got, professional equipment. They're probably, such and such official organization. I'm not going to make a fuss about it. But because it was obvious to tell they weren't that, it created a stink. Chipotle had to then say, no more guns in any of our establishments. So you can, per your appearance and your actions, you can affect something for everyone, which I highly doubt gun owners are looking at that sign when they walk in. But that's one clear example of a couple guys who didn't have the most, I want to say, maybe the best judgment in terms of that concept, ruining it for the rest of us, as it were. But not really.
Well, and there's also, ruining it as far as, look, there's also a problem with what I would call LARPing, live action role play, where you have these guys who think they're badasses, or, they want to project that they're badasses. They have no training. They have no education. They have no skill set whatsoever. And they open carry because they want to look like a badass, or they want attention. That's another reason they would do it. Yeah. And it's not real. Like, you're not really, yes, maybe you're a gun owner, but you're not really what I think more of us ought to be, or at least strive to be, when it comes to responsible gun ownership.
Yep. A fun example that I have is, so night vision, I kind of alluded to it earlier, is the status symbol of
course,
equipment nowadays. Have you used night vision much? Or like,
I used a little bit when I was in the military, but that's been 15 years. So
Okay.
not at all.
That would have been
Yeah.
like a Gen 2 PVS 14 or 7 or something.
Yes,
So,
yes, something like that.
yeah, all green and fuzzy.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. I had
yeah.
to drive with it on and I could barely even see anything.
Yep.
I almost ran into a couple of trees. So it wasn't what I'm sure it is today, but I'm in ignorance on this one.
No, that's fine. So, right now on social media, this is what people do. They go and buy night vision. They immediately post photos of it, which you got equipment. You're proud of it. You know, it costs $10,000, whatever.
Right. I get it.
I fully respect. That's awesome. But here's the problem that I have. They then go and film these really slow-mo, cool guy walking around, looking through night vision at things. And I'm like, okay, can I see some skill, or like, can I see you all like shoot or run or hike or or drive with them or something? Like, can I see
something that wouldn't get you or other people killed?
Yeah.
Please.
Just posting constant slow-mo, looking through your night vision. Like, anyone can do that. I could put my night vision on my wife and like she could do that. And I put some, trap lord music to it, and then it's super cool and gooning and all that. And it's like, no, let's show some competence and some skill. Let's set an example to the new gun owners who, they want to open carry a pistol, but they don't know exactly why. And they don't know what that actually means. Like, let's actually show people what you can do, with this equipment, which is why we have a policy, sort of an unspoken policy here in the company, that if we photograph a loadout of equipment, plate carrier, helmet, goggles, whatever, we have to demonstrate shooting with that loadout or some skill set with that loadout. Because I could go into the armory,
not just a badass picture.
Exactly. We have an armory because am I a model? Yes, I model our product all the time. Do I want to be a model? No, I don't. So every single time I like kit up with stuff, it is to shoot, do an activity, run a bunch or something that isn't just dress up. And I think that's something a lot of folks aren't doing because it's hard. I mean, going out and, running 1 kilometer, coming back and shooting, like, that's not fun. It's not easy when you're wearing armor and backpack and nods and stuff. But that's the stuff that new gun owners especially need to see to kind of set that standard of, oh, if I own an AR-15, there's some things I need to be able to do with this. I need to be able to move safely. I need to be able to shoot, at 50 meters at a minimum as far as distance goes. And I'm not seeing a lot of companies or people being willing to demonstrate competence. Even on YouTube, these popular gun YouTubers, they'll shoot at a bench, they'll shoot 20 rounds, 100, 200 rounds through a gun, they'll do a review. And I'm like, can I see some can I see some level of competence? You don't have to be good. I'm not expecting you to be an Olympic shooter, but can you just demonstrate some basic drills of actually using that firearm the way it's intended for these 3 million people that are showing up to watch this video? And the reason they don't is it's hard. It's work. It's not part of their brand or whatever. And so my big thing is, I really hope that our company can encourage people, other influencers or ambassadors, companies, whatever, it doesn't matter, to be demonstrating competence to new gun owners and current gun owners. These are the expectations you should have for this weapon. You should be able to draw from concealment in under 1.5 seconds, not 5 seconds, but like 1.5 seconds. This is us doing it. We can all do it. You should be able to do it too. This is what it takes to get there. Off you go. And we'll see you in 6 months and you'll be able to do it. So, and I just don't see a lot of that. And that's probably the most, maybe not, concerning, but also kind of discouraging, I guess, is people not pursuing competence, not pursuing, setting an example for competence. They just want to talk about gear or guns or coolness
or not even vision. Talk, but look cool. It's like that old adage, cool. The training is more important than the equipment. If you had to choose one, you should always choose the competency. You should always choose the skill set. And that's not to say that the tools aren't important. They are. Absolutely. The foundation is the skill set, the training, and then the tools to follow to match it.
Yeah. And I think things are getting better. I mean, even since there's a couple of YouTubers I've even seen, again, it's only a couple really, who after we started, pushing, because that's exactly what we say at the end of every video. I say, if you suck, you suck. That's kind of my phrase. The training, this gun or this night vision, it really doesn't matter. If I give it to a monkey, like it's not going to make him better. Like I have to actually get out there and train and do stuff. And I've seen a couple YouTubers kind of shift gears into that, concept at the end of every video, really hammering people with that. And I think that's great, but I think that we still have a ways to go as far as a new gun owner buying a gun and immediately upon buying it, being told at the desk or at the FFL or whatever, or even just, guys there talking about, shooting standards being like, oh yeah, you should be able to shoot like 5 rounds at 50 yards in under 5 seconds from standing. Like, don't just shoot it from a bench. Like you should be able to, find your sight picture pretty fast and be able to reload the gun under stress. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I should, actually think about that. So, so it is getting better, but I do think we're a ways away from that being more sort of commonplace and just understood that you have to have competence behind this item, before you, start running around and thinking you're awesome or, this Rambo.
Yeah. So, be awesome versus thinking you're awesome or trying to look awesome.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
Brother, I appreciate it, man. You obviously have a lot of insight to share. We went a lot of different directions that first half of the conversation where it's really focused on business. I didn't expect it to go there, but I'm really glad that it did because I know there's a lot of guys who will be inspired by that. They have their own things they're wanting to start and their own things that they want to do. And then to see you take it over a period of several years to 80 employees to reaching millions, quite literally, of people. That's pretty powerful, man. So I really appreciate you. We're going to share all this. I'm going to make sure I introduce you as a model. That's really important. It sounds like to you, right? And
professional Instagram model. Yeah,
that's right. Influencer, I think is what you said you wanted it to be. No, man, I'm excited to get it out to the guys. I appreciate you joining. Where do we connect with you? What's the best place to go to learn more about your products, your training, your Instagram, all that kind of stuff?
So our main website is trex-arms.com, just like it sounds. I am pretty active on Instagram. So I am an influencer. I am very active on Instagram. That's Lucas T-Rex Arms. And that's where you get, I don't want to say unfiltered or unhinged, but you get more of my personal observations on various things. And actually where I'm most accessible, this is kind of funny, is actually on Twitch. I use the streaming service there for a bunch of different things, but I go a lot more in depth on business stuff there and personal development stuff and just other things, politics. It doesn't matter what. They haven't kicked me off yet. Until they kick me off, I'm gonna keep being unhinged.
Don't test them. Don't tempt them, man. Because that is coming. I'm sure it's coming.
Oh, it is. But you can find me on there at BOTKIN. So it's a play on it's my gamer name. It's a play on my last name. But Instagram's a big one, and then our YouTube's T-Rex Arms. If you Google us, stuff will come up. And you'll get all the Redditors who hate me and all the groups that hate us.
All the good stuff, all the entertaining stuff.
Yeah, you can, if you want to, read some weird stuff for like 4 hours or more. Reddit's a great place to go.
Guys, don't do that. Just go straight to the source, be efficient with your time, get the training, learn what you need to learn, and then get on with the rest of your life. That's a better way to do it. Lucas, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.